My husband and I were talking one day and he was like, you know what? I'm really interested in starting a production company of podcasts. And we find voices that are a little lesser known, but they have something to say and they have a point of view and a perspective on the food world or on food itself. He's like, there's still something missing in the way stories are being told. The food history started because those are the conversations that Stephen and I are having at home. It's called Eating History. So this one is very different. It's like deep dives. Every season is a deep dive on a different food, and it's going to be about 8 episodes. I was doing so much research into the foodways of the U.S., and we got to talking about pizza, and we got to talking about these other things. He was like, well, why don't we start a podcast that talks about the history of these? So that was how that came about, because we're literally sitting on the couch nerding out about ordering pizza one night and wanting to know more behind it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Perfect Bite podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Perkins. Once in a blue moon, we hear someone's story and can instantly understand how special and important that person is to their community and industry. Today's guest completely embodies that for me. She may have started off supporting a few big names you'll recognize in the kitchen, but she was clearly always meant to be a star herself and continues to make her own name just as big, all while remaining extremely humble and with the ability to connect with others to help tell their stories. Please welcome Michelin-recognized chef, cookbook author, and co-host of the Chef's Cut podcast, Adrienne Cheatham.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Oh my gosh. I am so happy to talk with you. You and Joe are really such inspirations for me in the podcast space, and I can't wait for us to dive in there too.
I love your podcast. Are you kidding me?
Oh my God, thank you. That is so sweet. And I love that there are more and more shows coming into this space because I think there's a lot of different stories and characters and angles to tell here as well.
Mm-hmm. Our industry is so vast and varied and diverse in the types of paths that you can take. Yes. So I love that those voices and, you know, the podcasts now are reflecting more of that. It's not just food writers talking about food. It's not just chefs describing a dish that you can't see or taste. It's definitely showing more of the array of our industry.
Definitely. And I think that's a kind of new media era that we're entering as well. Like that's the term I've heard a lot is, you know, again, especially as some of these big names or these conglomerates are just going in new directions or laying folks off. I mean, we're now seeing some incredible things coming out. I can't wait to follow Ravenous's journey.
Oh, yeah.
Like crazy. And then I just chatted with the team at Caper the other week. So they're building something interesting that's very much, it feels like the Vanity Fair of food.
Oh,
that I've never seen, that I think all of us have never seen before, where it's like the real behind the scenes of who are these agents that are playing and setting up the places that we love so much.
Oh, that is so awesome. And actually our parent company for the Chef's Cut is launching our next podcast.
Oh,
very exciting. It's called Eating History. So this one is very different. It's like deep dives. Every season is a deep dive on a different food, and it's going to be about 8 episodes. The first season is about pizza and the origins and the history, tracing it to present and going to the future. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening in food media, and I can't wait to check everything out.
I'm so excited you announced that right away. I can't wait to get into it. Is this your first project with your husband, Stephen?
This is. It is.
Oh, so it's co-founders in life. Oh boy, we're going to get into that for sure. And pizza, I mean, I know you're now a New Yorker, but you started off in Chicago, and you and I are Chicago girls till we die. Doesn't matter where you put us in the country. I always do love to take things back to the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit more about when you first fell in love with food? What was eating and cooking like in your household growing up?
So eating and cooking in my house was rather chaotic. It wasn't like this Zen experience. My mom came from a family of 12. My dad came from a family of 14 or something, although he was raised mostly as an only child in Mississippi by his grandparents. But when he came up to Chicago, his family was huge. So nobody in my house knew how to cook small quantities of anything.
No.
We didn't have one ice tray. We had 20 ice trays because you never know how many people are going to come over. And it was this really chaotic experience, but there was a calm in the chaos because as a kid, you kind of fly under the radar. All the cousins would play. So you run through the chaos of, aunts or uncles arguing or people watching the sports game and like throwing something at the television. And the kids are just like, oh, we're going to go outside and play. And then my mom worked in restaurants. So it was another form of chaos, but more organized there. So
Yes.
I feel like I never had like a normal, oh, I just watched my grandmother cook kind of experience. No, it was, there were
Yes.
always massive bowls or massive things going on. And we were pretty broke growing up. So, like for Christmas, my mother would make massive batches of Christmas cookies and give them out to people in tins as Christmas gifts.
Love that.
So, yeah, we would be making Christmas cookies for literally, we would be making dough for a solid week, portioning and putting it in the freezer, and then baking, and then icing and frosting and powder sugaring. And everything was a production. Cooking was never just like, oh, we're just going to cook lasagna.
Or like, stand with me, Adrienne, and I'll show you how to do it. My mom is one of 9 as well.
Oh,
So
yeah,
when you
so
said
you
12
get
and
it.
14, I was like, holy shit.
You get it. Yeah. You know what it's like. The
So-
kitchens are always full.
The kitchen was also off limits to kids. It was get out unless you're helping. So,
That's a good
but
rule.
I agree. It's like you're getting a lot, like we still like, even on my partner Tim's like side of the family, like not as big, but like a decent number of people where you're getting in line to like serve yourself.
Yep.
And but the line could be really long.
Yeah, it can. I eat while I cook. So usually when the food is ready, I'm not even hungry.
Smart.
So then I just wait till everybody else has gotten food. And then I'm like, whatever, I'll just have like a scoop of dressing.
It's just something. Yeah.
Right.
Now that you are so focused on food with your career and are a wonderful chef, are you the person in the family that everyone's like, you're going to do everything now?
And sometimes, yes. But
Yeah.
the funny thing is my family knows that I spend so much time cooking that when we're together, I'm not going to cook. I'm the one to bring wine and like flowers. I
I
will
love that.
bring you bouquets of flowers. I will help set the table. I know how to do a beautiful formal setting. My mom taught me that. And then working in fine dining, you learn that too. So I can do folded napkins. I can set the table while you guys go cook. But it's pretty rare. It's pretty rare. Unless there's like a massive piece of protein that my mom is like, oh my God, I was at this restaurant supply store. I was at Costco and I got this like 12 rib rack. I'm like, Susan, okay, just let me handle it.
Sue, girl.
She has no chill. She has no chill.
I appreciate that. Clearly, food is such a love language as well in your family because
Mhm.
there's nothing worse than, especially if you're like, oh, I'm having people over. Like the fear is that no one's going to eat enough. So
Right.
I'm also that person who's like the spread, like the full, this is probably way too much, but
It's better to have
hopefully-
too much and not
Yeah.
need it than need it and not have it.
Absolutely.
Because it's not going to go to
Yes.
waste. Like we repurpose leftovers, we eat them as is. Nothing is going to go to waste. So if I have too much, I'm okay with that.
So tell me a little bit more. So you grew up, you kind of saw the chaos of the kitchen and were enamored by it, but you're also a fellow journalism and business friend. That's what you went to school to study. Where do you think during that time period you found yourself wanting to say, I want to go into food and into kitchens as a career versus, say, being on the other side of things and reporting?
Well, I wanted to go into food initially. That was my goal. I wanted to go to culinary school after high school. And there were only a couple of 4 years. There was CIA, there was NECI, New England Culinary Institute at the time. And this was pre-internet. So, if you didn't know somebody who went to these schools, it was really hard to get information on them. School counselors weren't handing out culinary school info to high schoolers. So my parents convinced me that there was no way that I could go straight to culinary school because I would burn out physically, probably mentally, probably develop a drinking problem, and have nothing to fall back on. So from an early age of knowing I wanted to go into food, my parents were like, absolutely not. You have to go to regular people college first, and then you can transfer over to that. And we'll support you emotionally, not financially, but we'll support you emotionally when you do. So I went to undergrad. I went to college first, and I thought about business finance because it was okay, my mom kind of convinced me for a semester that like just make a lot of money and go out to eat at the best restaurants in the world. Like go into finance, fly around, eat at all the fancy, amazing restaurants that you hear about, but don't make it a career. Don't make it a lifestyle. And I did a couple semesters in business and finance, and I was like, the only thing I like about this is the research. And so I'd much rather apply that to something else. And so I thought about journalism as a direct tie-in because that would at least be a career that, yes, my mom is right. I spent 25 years in a kitchen and I physically can't stand for 18 hours a day anymore. And I do need to have something else. So I thought about writing as a potential backup career or something that I could weave in along the way and have as a backup when I physically couldn't do the work anymore.
Yes. And did you love writing as a kid too?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did love writing. I never got that into it. I was in like AP Lit senior year of high school, and that was a lot of fun. I loved it, but it was tactile, but not tactile enough. I needed to like be moving. I needed to be touching things and feeling textures. It's just like I can look at something and I see a texture. So like I'm writing words in an essay and I'm like, I feel the texture of what I'm talking about. So I'd rather just be working with that with my hands.
Yeah. And especially like, yeah, you were feeling part of that creative side of your brain, but you were feeling antsy, it sounds like. And it's like, yeah, I got a marketing degree too. It's good to fall back on some of the business classes, right? That's good. It helps us understand what we need to do to like survive in capitalism.
Right. And as a chef, you need to know your numbers. You need to know accounting principles. So I made it through like managerial accounting, which I failed miserably in college. Like that was my only F in college. Maybe I should have gone to class more, but
that was stats for me.
Yeah.
Stats did not go well.
No bueno for me either.
We don't need these things now though, so it's okay.
Yeah. I learned the accounting principles of restaurants later on.
I mean, and there's some of us who do a lot better, like earning the degree on the job.
Yeah.
Now, you did end up going to culinary school, which is awesome. And then after that, you were at Le Bernardin. So talk to us about that period. So you're getting through culinary school. What were you learning about your own style, your own cuisine, your flavors you were gravitating towards the most? And tell us how you then landed at one of the most premier French restaurants you can go to.
It was totally by accident. So I knew I wanted to go to culinary school. And when I came out of undergrad, I only had $5,000 in debt. And
it's pretty good.
I think,
it's pretty great.
Really great. I went to college at Florida A&M University. I got in-state tuition after my first year. So my tuition dropped dramatically. And then I got a full scholarship.
Amazing.
So it covered everything from my sophomore through senior plus a semester. So I looked at the tuition for CIA and I just refused. And I met somebody in college who was moving to New York. We were in a relationship and I was like, oh, you know what? I'll move to New York. He's like, come on, the better culinary schools are there instead of going back to Chicago. So I was like, you know what? You're right. I'll move to New York. I'll go to culinary school. But CIA, I would have racked up so much debt.
I couldn't $100,000, right?
Yes. And I couldn't wrap my mind around taking out debt for trade school and something that you essentially are learning more on the job than you ever will in a class. Yes, you need the paperwork to show you have the commitment, but the actual skill set comes from doing the job in the restaurants. Yes. And I had worked in restaurants a bit. So I found out about ICE, Institute of Culinary Education, which at the time was on 23rd Street, near where Flatiron is. So it was an amazing location. You're not far from the farmer's market. You're not far from any restaurant in the city. You can get around easily. So I did the work study program. And it took me about 2 years to work off tuition. And I worked for chefs around the city when they would come to the school and off hours in their restaurants or helping them set up demos and those walk around tasting events that all the chefs get asked to do. So I learned so much doing that. And then I was in classes for like 6 months. And it was such a crazy time because I learned so much. And then it came time for internship, which is the last thing you need to graduate. And I was set on going back to Chicago and I was set on working for Charlie Trotter. So I was I was so excited. I kept emailing. Well, sorry, email wasn't a real thing back then just yet, but I was faxing. I
Yes.
was hard copy mailing. I was doing everything, calling and leaving messages, and I could not get a call back. And my mom had worked in restaurants in Chicago. She had sold food for Kraft, and Charlie Trotter's was one of her accounts. So I kept leaving these messages like, my mom has experience as a sales rep for the restaurant, and I would love to come and work there. And I just couldn't get through to anybody. And I physically wasn't in Chicago. And the timeline was running out to confirm your internship. Otherwise, you don't graduate. And I'm like, I did not do 2 years of free labor to not graduate. So, because at least you came out with your associates. So I had a classmate who was getting her internship at Bernardin. And she was actually friends with Chef Ripert's wife. They had worked together at JP Morgan. And I was like, I'm freaking out. I don't know what to do. I really want to go to like a high-end fine dining restaurant. Michelin wasn't really in the US yet, so I didn't really know about Michelin. But the classmate that I have, her name was Bonnie, she said, well, you know what? I can call Sandra and see if she can do anything. And I was like, thank you so much. Because I had already been physically going to Le Bernardin to bring my resume and bring it to the host stand, introduce myself to the maitre d', mailing it, stalking Chef Ripert's assistant for 3 weeks. So when Sandra, Chef Ripert's wife, said, there's somebody who's applying for an internship, sweetheart, hubby of mine, can you do me this big favor? And he asked his assistant for my resume. She's like, oh, we've got several of this woman's resumes. She keeps bringing them.
Yeah.
No,
it's what
not
you
at
have
all.
to do.
Yeah. So I finally got my internship there. And that was how I wound up at Le Bernardin, was just, one right person to help you get your foot in the door. And then at the end of my internship, they offered me a full-time job. And I had been bartending during work study in culinary school because I would work all day for chefs around the city. And then I would bartend at night. That was the only job I could find that gave me that perfect time slot to make enough money to pay rent, but not enough to interfere with kitchen work. So, yeah. So I quit my bartending job and then started full-time at Le Bernardin.
Holy cow. Well, Trotter's missed out on you for sure. And I'm lucky to be involved with the Trotter Project today, which has been so great. Scholarships are ending this week. So it's an exciting time.
So great.
But I love that the universe kind of gave you that it might not be this direction for Chicago. You've given back to both cities so much since then. And so it's one door might not be opening, but one clearly did. And you spent 8 years together. I mean, you and Eric seem to have grown very close, I should say. During that time, what do you think it was about Le Bernardin, about your working relationship with Eric, that you then had the opportunity to help with recipe development, writing for his cookbook, and then also his television program? So the journalism side came out really quickly and you got to experience all of your passions in one.
It really was a perfect setting. And that's probably why I stayed so long, is because it's a restaurant that's constantly growing and evolving. And Chef Ripert is always doing all these different projects. And early on, there are so many cooks that come through Le Bernardin. There are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of cooks over the years that he's seen cycle in and out. And a lot of people work there for 1 year because you have to do a full year to get it on your resume. Otherwise, you can't use it as a reference. That's the rule for most restaurants.
Yeah.
So most people would just get it on their resume and quit literally on their 1 year day or the day after. It was kind of messed up. So I think during my first year, I started to set myself apart, because if I was you start off on garde manger at Le Bernardin, you're cutting the garnish. You're not even cutting the fish yet. You're cutting the garnish. And I would do my work. And yes, at first it was horrible and I would have to redo stuff. And then you get better and then you don't make the mistakes again. And so they would see that I would learn the lesson, master that task, and then look for the next thing. And then I would go to the entree line and help wipe out pans during service for the saute station when they were busy. And I would help people on the hot side on hot apps on the second course line restack plates during service. Like, I've got downtime because garde manger gets hit first, and then second course, and then third course. So if there's 5 people on the cold station, Once the rush is over, the hotlines are going to get hit and we've got time to restock our stuff. So I would restock our stuff really fast, cut more chives, do whatever I had to do, and then help the hotlines during their busy time. And it was great. So he started to see that I was very passionate about it, that I was very committed to it, and I had no intentions on leaving on my 1-year anniversary. So we would chat because the women's locker room at that time was behind where the offices were. So I would see him sometimes walking through the hallway, and I'm walking super fast to like hurry up and get to the kitchen. And it was just very uncanny because his son is named Adrienne and his mother and I share a birthday.
Oh my gosh.
Which we didn't know until like 3 years in. But then somewhere during that first 2 to 3 year period, you know, he would start to get to know the cooks who stayed past the 1 year. And he found out that I had studied journalism. And he was like, oh, really? So the first thing that I got asked to do outside of the kitchen, and I got to take, you know, it was a couple days here or there, I would have half a shift and I would be in the office, was copy edit the manuscript for his cookbook.
Great.
It was great. So I got to sit there with my little,
Yeah.
it was great. I got to sit there with my little red pen and like mark things up. I was so fast. I'm like, this was a syntax error, bit punctuation. This references an ingredient that's not listed in the recipe. It was such a cool experience and it brought my OCD back and I loved it. So yeah, it was really, really cool. But we did skip over the fact that I worked in pastry before going to culinary school. So,
which also requires like perfection.
That's not like on my bio stuff, but it was a real time in my life.
Do you think you prefer savory over sweet?
I do. I do. I was just so rigid before. And so I wanted to learn the savory side just to learn it so I could be well-rounded if I had to fall back on food writing. And I never went back. So I went to culinary school thinking I would go back to pastry after. And then when they offered me the job at Bernardin, I was like, this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like, chef, how much salt do I add until it tastes good? Yeah. How long does this cook for in the oven? Until it's fucking done. I was not used to those kind of rules. I was used to like structure and like.
What's your zodiac?
Scorpio.
Oh, interesting. I'm a Virgo. So I was like, do I have a fellow Virgo sister? With like how just rule following and like very like perfectionist you are.
I didn't know that was a Virgo trait.
Yes.
Something we share then.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I love this opportunity. So it definitely started to get some wheels turning for you, for sure, in terms of like, hey, maybe I should be involved with the reporting side of things again, or with the writing side of things again. What made you say that it was time to leave Le Bernardin and you started then a period with Marcus Samuelsson?
So that kind of happened after 8 years at Le Bernardin.
That's a long time.
It is. And I had become exec sous and I had turned down a couple of opportunities to leave and work for other chefs that I was just too insecure or too nervous to take. I was too nervous to take that leap of faith. And then when it came time to go to Chef Ripert has the annual Cayman Cookout. So Eric throws this massive food festival in Grand Cayman Island at the Ritz, and it's a beautiful food festival. And this year, Marcus was there. And obviously, we're two of the only people of color in the kitchen. And I was working for Eric at the time, and Marcus had a sous chef who had come out of Le Bernardin also. So he asked about me, and the chef was like, oh, and she lives in Harlem. So I had no real intention of going to work for anybody else just yet. I hadn't really thought about leaving, but I knew that it was just now becoming more day-to-day, same stuff. It wasn't like something new and exciting a couple of times a year. So
the challenge was leaving.
Exactly. And honestly, at the time, the chef who ran the kitchen, I can take getting yelled at. That's not a problem. But there was one incident that it set me off. And I was like, I'm out. And I didn't quit on the spot, which most people would have. But I decided, you know what? I am going to be open to opportunities. And Marcus followed up because he saw me at Red Rooster. So in Cayman, I was like, no, I'm not really interested. And it's not like he was pitching me on a job at the food festival. But he's like, oh, we work with programs at some of the public schools in Harlem. If you would like to help out, they would love to see a woman at doing some of these talks with the kids. I was like, oh, yeah, great, totally. And then a few months later, he sees me. I was at the bar on my day off at Red Rooster. And he was like, oh, hi, it's good to see you again. And at that point, the chef had freaked out on me so bad that I was like, I'm out. I'm not killing myself for you anymore.
No.
And so when Marcus asked if I would be interested in joining, I was like, maybe. I think it's time. Because, Eric is very involved in the kitchen. He tastes things before service, lunch, and dinner. He's in the kitchen, but he's not managing the cooks and all that. So the person that was managing the cooks, I could see in my 8 years there he had been sent to anger management a few times, and he had gotten to a very toxic point. I don't know what was going on with him personally, but it was definitely affecting his behavior at work.
Yeah. It's just, there's no excuse at the end of the day. I understand that this has been so much a part of kitchen culture for so long, but I appreciate that you also saw, like, my mental health is worth a lot more than this. And there are other places for you to bloom more. And I feel like, as I deep dive basically into everyone's bios, and I feel like when you were with Marcus, that this was starting to be Adrienne's time. You weren't just like, hey, I'm trying really, really hard for other people. It was when, yes, it's been 10 years, but you had that beautiful feature from New York Times that got to be.
Oh, that was so cool.
It was still, are you still dancing for fun?
Not as much as I used to.
But just like whenever there's a dance floor, you're out there?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, or I still take classes a couple of times a year, but not a couple of times a month like I used to.
Got it. What dance are you focused on?
Usually like modern or ballet.
Yes.
Ballet,
I'm telling you,
not like you used to, but
journalism, being a chef, ballet, you like something where you're like, I have to get it just right.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, you're right.
And I love that, like, again, you were with Marcus for some time, but you were starting to come to the forefront. Did you feel like you were then able to play with the flavors that you like more and start to create your own style?
I think so, but I had no concept of what that was because I had no desire to ever work for myself or be the person out in front. I wanted to be the operational person, maintaining the standard of a kitchen, of a restaurant every day, while the chef who's out in front gets the accolades. And so working for Marcus, I thought I was going to do that for him like I was doing at Le Bernardin, where I'm holding the standard. I'm the stay-at-home mom. I don't do offsite events. One of the other chefs would go to support the offsite. I would do the prep and the pack for it because my checklists have checklists and they're just so well organized, if I may toot my own prepping and packing horn. But the actual
satisfying. I'm like,
right.
Oh yeah.
It is so satisfying. And then they're like, we don't have salt. I'm like, check the bottom left corner of the cooler, wrapped 2 times in plastic wrap with blue tape on the side labeled fine sea salt. You will also find your coarse sea salt.
Like, yes, you do.
Absolutely, you do. So I would love doing things like that. And then for Marcus, I thought I was going to be doing that for him because I wasn't hired to be the chef of the restaurants. I was hired to be the corporate chef under the corporate exec chef, a guy named Nils Noren. I was hired to be his CDC. And Nils was like a great food nerd and operations person who loved the kind of behind the scenes thing also. So I was so excited to work with him, work with Marcus, and support behind the scenes. And then literally the first event I was helping Marcus with was like a demo at Degustibus. And he's like, and for the next part of this demo for this dish, Adrienne is going to come up here and explain it and talk you through it. And I was like, you mean this Adrienne? But you can't miss a beat because these people have paid money for these tickets. So that was my first taste of it. And I was wildly uncomfortable, but I made it through. It was fine. Nobody noticed. Fake it till fake it until you get comfortable, I guess. Yeah. And I started to see that Marcus was putting his chefs out there more and more, which I was, again, mentally unprepared for. I thought I was going to be behind the scenes in the kitchen, and I was happy about that. And then he was the one who put me up for the New York Times doc. And he was the one who brought Gail Simmons to the restaurant to introduce us.
Oh my gosh. All the
So
way
it
back
was,
then.
yeah, it was crazy how he was forcing me out front, and I did not want to be there at all.
He saw it in you before you did. And I
Yeah,
appreciate that so much. And that's awesome that you were able to have these mentors who, again, saw something in you that you're like, okay, maybe it's there, but I'm not ready to fully own it.
right.
Now, during this time, Top Chef happens. So you had to get over some stage fright. You had to get
Oh
over
my God.
being like at the forefront. What do you think?
Yes.
What do you think helped you with that? What would you recommend to other folks who are maybe a little scared to take the leap? Because especially in 2026, I'm like, oh, great, podcasts have to be on camera. Like, you have to be putting yourself out there as much as possible.
Yeah. And if you have a restaurant, especially, I mean, even if you, I had already left Red Rooster when they officially called, when the season was starting to be cast. I had just left the restaurant, and it was just like a 7 day a week, 2 year kind of job. Eventually, I was exec chef of Street Bird, and then I was exec chef of Red Rooster while still having to do some of the corporate stuff of traveling with Marcus. So if I wasn't physically in the restaurant, I was physically traveling to festivals and events with Marcus. And you're working like it's a 20-hour a day grind, because at that time the restaurant group was growing and we needed a little more support on the corporate side because we were opening restaurants in so many places. I lived in Bermuda for 4 months to open the restaurant there, and immediately came back as EC of Red Rooster. And I'm like, I've only been here for company meetings, but okay, now I'm the exec chef and I have to hold this down until I go do the next thing. So it was like me, some of the sous chefs, we would kind of rotate and fill in the gaps. And it was a great experience. I learned so much and I started to become more comfortable out in front. But it was just a 7 day a week thing. And I was like, I never thought I would be too tired to go to work or I would be burnt out, but I felt it. And so I left. I gave like, a month or two notice, but I wound up, Marcus and I are still good friends, but I was like, I got to take a break. So I took some time off and I had budgeted for like 3 months off. I wound up taking 6 months off. And during that first 3 month period was when Top Chef called. And I
No time
would
off.
yeah, that was 2 months. So I would definitely, I think now it's very different, but back then it was just airing on Bravo. There weren't streaming services either. So I never watched the show. So I would say anybody going to do Top Chef, watch it first.
Understand what they're going to throw at you.
Yeah, know what they're going to throw at you. But also at Red Rooster, like you asked before, I had started to work on flavors that I'm interested in, but it wasn't something I had planned on doing. I thought I would always be executing somebody else's vision. So I hadn't really developed a concept. I hadn't really developed a point of view on how I look at things or how I show people my point of view. So being on Top Chef, I'm like, okay, I know how to execute. That's my strong suit. I may not be the best, although I've acquired some skills along the way, but I will outwork anybody in the kitchen. And I was so excited to be there, but I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I was going to cook. And when they threw challenges at us, I'm like, I can just execute something that I know from one of the restaurants I've worked at before. And that's not a good fit for Top Chef because
They want to see
doesn't,
you.
yeah, it doesn't tell
Yeah.
anybody anything about you as an individual, where you're from, what you're interested in. Even if you're not cooking the food of your heritage, you're not cooking food that you're like necessarily passionate about either. So I'm just like, I'm picking a dish from Bernardin here, essentially. I'm picking a dish from Red Rooster here, from this place here. Technique, fine, but not a distinct anything to say.
Yeah.
It was, so it was a little rough in the beginning because I didn't watch the show and I didn't know that this is where you go to become a chef, or where you need to have your shit kind of sorted out before coming here. So I was floundering for a little bit.
Were you getting that type of feedback of like, we want to see Adrienne, we want to know who you are?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It
Padma,
forced
Tom,
you.
Gail, all of them were saying that. I mean, this is fine. I guess it fits the challenge, but it's like, it's not executed to the best that it could be. And it's also, it doesn't tell us anything. It's just like, okay, great. You did this fish and you did this thing, but what does it say? What's the flavor profile? What's the story behind it? And I'm like, food,
Like delicious.
right? Seasoned food.
Yes. Did you like to eat it? Yeah. Now, I mean, you did well enough, of course. You get to the finals. So, especially at Cherry Bomb, you discussed you used to spend summers in the South and your dad's from Mississippi. Were you starting to draw on the Southern flavors and cuisines that you were inspired by growing up?
Yeah, because I mean, my mom is not Black or Southern. She is from the north side of Chicago, but she definitely spent time with my family who raised my dad. The grandparents and the great aunt who raised my father all came up to Chicago and spent several months with a newlywed couple teaching my mother how to cook
Oh,
everything Southern.
so sweet. Oh my gosh.
Planted a garden out in the back, and she had her vegetables, and then go to the farmer's market, and we would sit there and snap the ends off of string beans and shell beans and dry them for the winter. So they taught her everything like that, how to build a larder, how to build a pantry. She already knew like pickling and canning because her parents grew up during the Depression, and she worked in restaurants before I was born. So she had skills and knew how to cook, but she didn't know Southern food. So one of the funniest stories is the Lula, Nona, and Ruby, the three women who like raised my dad, asked her, all right, Susan, we're going to start getting dinner ready. And it's like the afternoon after they've had lunch. And she's like, okay, they're like, do you know how to make greens? And she's like, oh, absolutely. And they're like, okay, you get the greens started. I'll get started on this. We'll knock it all out. Okay, great. So my mom makes a big, beautiful salad. And she's like, great. So should I just go ahead and keep this in the refrigerator? And they're like, what is that? And she's like, the greens. And they're like, oh, dear God, we have a lot of work to do. So,
Different type of meal.
yeah, different type of our greens are cooked. So
Yes.
it was hilarious. I've heard stories like that. And it was just so funny because when I grew up, she was cooking everything from Thai food, Mexican food, you know, quail or things like that, to chicken cordon bleu. And I mean, jalapeno poppers. It was such a random selection of food that we grew up on. But the main through line any given night of the week had some kind of Southern to it. And it wasn't necessarily the greatest hits like collard greens and fried chicken, because where my family is from in Mississippi, you only fry chicken when the hens are of a certain age in the summer after they've laid a lot of eggs. The meat is tough and it's like the old hen. And that's why you marinate them in buttermilk, is to soften, because the enzymes in the buttermilk will help tenderize the chicken. So fried chicken is something that you only do a few times a year, not weekly. And you also save up bacon grease to fry the chicken. So it takes months. It takes months to save up enough bacon grease to fry
Oh
chicken.
my cow. That is so interesting. And it's almost that, again, food philosophy of like, it's the end of the chickie's life.
Yes.
Now
and
we're doing it.
Yes, exactly. Because frying was like you marinate it in buttermilk for a few days to tenderize it and add the seasonings and get the flavor in there. And then when you actually fry it, it's like low and slow cooking for like 45 minutes. You're not cooking it at 375. You're cooking it like around 325. So it's bubbling, but it's like, it's a slower cook. It's like a 325, 350. I mean, nobody used a thermometer, so I can't tell you exactly, but it was like a low, slow kind of cook for the fry. And you'd have these beautiful, craggly pieces of fried chicken that were like evenly golden brown all over. And then you would put them on a church summer buffet table, and they'd sit there for a while. It's not like you're eating it fresh out of the grease either. But that was how we grew up. So my mother would do those things, and she would do them the way that she had learned how to do them. And so on Top Chef, when they asked, like, what is the food that you're interested in? I'm like, it's Southern food, because that's when my mom cooked. And then spending the summers with family in Mississippi, I saw a completely different side of Southern food than what I was seeing in the North. Like even in Chicago, where half of the Black population is from Mississippi, or first generation removed, you still have the restaurants where it's still the celebration foods, not the everyday foods. So I was like, I kind of want to dig into that a little more, but I hadn't yet started the research. I hadn't yet started doing the sorting and organizing of my thoughts and of the ingredients. So I got there, but it did take a while.
Yeah. And it's almost as you're saying that, it clearly was your impetus to say, okay, being in front of millions of people on television
Yes.
finally opened your heart to being a founder, being an entrepreneur, because then you went on to do Sunday Best and then write Sunday Best.
Yes.
And that is, as you said, that feeling of celebrating the everyday through these Southern flavors and pushing past misconceptions that we have of Southern food and what it really means. And so when do you think that you finally said, I'm comfortable being myself and being my own brand?
It was actually the challenge that my mother came on Top Chef for. The parents had a potluck while we were out doing some random shit in the woods in the mountains in Colorado. And we didn't know our families were there. And we arrive at this cabin and we have a meal prepared by our loved ones. And one of the staples in my house from the time before I was born is gumbo. And so my mother made her gumbo. And my mother's style of gumbo is more of a Cajun style, not like a Creole style, which is a little different. In Creole gumbo, it's either filet or okra, but you don't do gumbo filet powder to thicken and okra. You do one or the other. In Creole, you either do chicken and andouille or you do seafood. Cajun, everything goes in. So it's a very distinct, like, flavor of gumbo that everybody in Chicago seems to do more of the Cajun style. Okay. And so she made this gumbo and it was delicious. And then they tell us we have to recreate it. And we have like 1 or 2 hours. I can't remember how long, but you don't make gumbo in 1 or 2 hours. Ain't no way.
That's a low and slow situation, right?
Oh, yeah. And you're layering stuff in there over the course of those hours. It's like you build the roux, you add the trinity to the roux so it releases the liquid and cooks and sweats in the roux. Then you start to add the layers of flavor. You fry up the andouille on the side and you pour that in. You fry up the chicken thighs on the side and then you add those in. And then obviously the seafood very last minute. But we usually cook like, you know, the hand of a king crab or blue crabs or whatever. We would put 1 or 2 in early to get that shellfish flavor in the roux with the trinity. But then you add the actual seafood you're going to eat at the very end. It takes hours. All that to say, it's not a short process. And my mom made gumbo because she had hours to make it. And then we get there and they're like, you've got 2 hours to recreate your family's dish. I'm like, great. Thanks, Mom. This is going to suck. But I actually won that challenge. That was, I think, the first, I had won a quick fire, but this was the first challenge that I had ever won on Top Chef. And there were down to 4 of us. It was Joe Flamm, Joe Sasto, me, and Carrie. And I won that challenge with my mom's gumbo. And obviously I had to do it in a different way. I strained out the sauce to use the gumbo sauce and then put the seafood like arranged on the plate. And then that got poured over and had the rice on the side in a cut little crab leg. But that was the first time I was like, wow, I just did gumbo traditional flavors, but in a non-traditional serving. And that was the moment that I was like, oh, maybe I can do this.
The everyday special feeling. Without taking hours if you've only got X amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what Sunday Best, that was where that concept started to get developed because it was how we were raised. Like my mom, we didn't have a lot of money. She definitely didn't have a lot of time. And she made something special with very little. Even on nights where there was no food to be cooked, it was just heating up leftovers. She would like turn off the lights and turn on this track lighting we had over the table. So it was dim with kind of cool lamp light. And she would call it restaurant night. And she would hold her little pad of paper. And this was like her way of just making it fun that
Special.
we're eating leftovers. She's like, tonight on the menu we have, and we would play restaurant. And then my sister and I would get to order, and she would heat it up in the microwave. And here is your lasagna. Here is your chicken cordon bleu. And it was always like a family style salad in the middle. But she found all these ways to just make everyday things so special, even if it was something that we were familiar with. And that's what I wanted to do with Sunday Best, was show, it's like watching a movie. Walking down the street is rather mundane in regular life, but when you watch a movie, you know what that person's thinking about or running to or running from, and it becomes this moment that makes you tap in. And that's what I wanted to do with Sunday Best.
That cinematic feeling. Like even when you throw on a playlist, like, again, I'm just doing my makeup to come into my kitchen here.
Right.
And I still threw on my French cafe like playlist this morning doing my makeup to be like, let's feel a little special.
Yes, exactly. And it could just be putting on red lipstick or, I mean, hell, putting on mascara. Like if you don't normally wear eye makeup, little things like that, or adding a flourish of chopped parsley or chives over the top of a dish at the end. Just something to show that you're giving yourself a little more care than normal.
Your mom and the women in your family are really special. And they clearly have passed that down to you, that feeling of like, just show a little love.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the biggest amount of effort or time,
Right.
but just showing yourself and showing others that. And I think that's really clearly like where you've blossomed, is that sense of you doing it, but you also make other people feel that way.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
And everything you're doing, I think that's almost like your storytelling secret ingredient is pulling that feeling out. And I honestly could talk to you for hours. This is very difficult to go through, like
wrap it up,
done. But not wrap it up right now, I promise. So we got to talk about, so your baby ended up a year later being nominated for a James Bearden Award.
That was so exciting. Oh my God.
Like,
oh my
God. It's still clearly so exciting. What did that feel like to be like, oh my gosh, I am now my family's flavors, the things I've always loved, and me, Adrienne, we are now recognized for who we are.
Oh, that was an incredible moment. It really was, because it's, again, life is rather mundane and you don't think anybody's paying attention or anybody cares, or, it's like I grew up before the internet. It was like nobody gives a shit what you ate for breakfast. Nobody cares if you don't feel well or you're sad or you're whatever. And so being able to share my family's background and have my grandfather, who passed away, in the pages of a book that's nominated, my husband's grandmother, who taught him the shrimp Creole that he cooked for me on one of our first inside dates, having their stories, right? Having their stories come out, having my mom, her parts of her life told. This is a woman who's worked her ass off her entire life, and she's taken care of everybody around her. And she loves hospitality, and she loves giving to people and making them feel good and making them know that they're special. And to be able to say thank you and let people know how special she is. And my sister and my dad, it's like, my sister is amazing. And to be able to share some of our stories together and the times that we've had growing up and into adulthood, it's just such an amazing experience. And you can go the more restaurant way, but I really wanted to make these home dishes that reflect the dishes that we cooked at home growing up and tell those family stories behind each dish.
I think that's why it's so special, because it's like you finally opened your heart up to everyone. You got again, it was kind of like Eric gave you a little nudge. Marcus gave you a bigger nudge. Top Chef forced you.
Right. Gave me a kick in the butt.
And then you were like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, it was really cool. I was so excited by that. And I was just so honored to be able to, again, talk about my family, because my family is crazy. They're out of their fucking minds. These people are wildly insane and wildly awesome. And it was just really cool to be able to share that, especially showing the diversity of my family and the food we grew up eating, because my mom's family is German Jewish, Irish Catholic, and English Protestant. If they can get along, why can't anybody else? And then she married a Black man from Chicago, but who was raised in Mississippi. And our family, we've never confirmed this, but his grandfather was part Choctaw. So again, we've never confirmed it because courthouses in Mississippi burned down in the 30s. So we've never confirmed, but it's just such a diverse mixture. And in Mississippi, you have tamales and an Italian culture. So you have pepperoncini and the pot roast. And there's just these diverse foodways that came together and that really informed a lot of the research of pulling the threads of where these groups of people came to the U.S. and how they influenced the food of where they wound up.
Oh, the real America.
Exactly.
Is it all coming together, which is so beautiful. And it's all in your family, which is awesome.
And the through line, that is American cuisine. It's all these different immigrant groups over the years from German, Dutch, Irish, obviously indigenous. The foundation is always indigenous and West African in the U.S. And that is the through line, is the cooking techniques started with indigenous and African cooking techniques. And then all the ingredients and foodways of these other groups was added to that because those were the people who were working the fields and working in the kitchens. So they created what American food is today by taking their own and then adding other people's to it. And that is what the book is about, is showing how we share culture through foodways.
Yes, it's so beautiful. And I mean, speaking of history, so one, we got to talk Chef's Cut, of course. Yeah. Why did you decide to get into the podcast space and how much fun you've been having with Joe? But then also, you're now going to be doing Eating History with Stephen.
Yeah.
And that's coming out. I mean, by the time this episode airs, I think you'll be right around the time.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So tell us about why you decided to get to this side of storytelling.
So it's interesting. Like, I've done a few articles here and there, but I haven't done a lot with journalism or some of the stuff I learned outside of food. And my husband and I were talking one day and he was like, you know what? I'm really interested in starting a production company of podcasts. And we find voices that are a little lesser known, but they have something to say and they have a point of view and a perspective on the food world or on food itself. And he kept hearing me talk about how wide the food industry is. And he was like, the food podcast that I love, you know, he's like, there's still something missing in the way stories are being told. And like, we all love Splendid Table and shows like this and Dessert People for Bon Appetit. They're great podcasts. But he was like, the conversations that I hear you have with your friends that are chefs, I'm not hearing conversations like that. Would you be interested in doing a podcast so that we can learn how it goes? We can kind of learn the ropes without burning a bridge with somebody because it's you. And also it's like we're starting off, so it's not like we have money to pay somebody. So he asked who I would want as a co-host. And I just, in my mind, I was like, oh, of course it would be in New York. So let me think about it. And he looked at me and he was like, what about Joe? He's like, you two have so much fun hanging out. We've always had a blast. You guys have great conversations. And like, why wouldn't you two do it together? I was like, yeah, duh. Like after that, it was like 100%. Like, even though he beat me in the finale of Top Chef, whatever, we're over it.
Listen.
It's not like we still talk about it every day.
This is what you get to neg him on forever. And I think it's so perfect you guys chose basically a best friend. That you're like, well, we can so easily talk to each other instead of it being like okay, this is going to be very formal. And it's, you know, maybe this person that we're pairing you up with just because the optics are perfect.
Right.
You know, you guys talk the shit with each other. You
do
have some great folks on, but I also appreciate that you're having really important conversations that affect all of us, such as that Cisco merger and the repercussions that it's going to have. And that's a whole other podcast in itself, girl, where it's just talking about really how this industry affects all of us, no matter how you're connected. So I love how you guys are doing that. And clearly
thank you.
You love it so much that you and Steven said, Eating History.
Yes. And it's so funny how these things start. Like, I'm an executor. I'm an operational person. That is where I thrive. As observant as I am when it comes to certain things like produce and knife cuts and textures and temperatures, Stephen is very observant when it comes to what people are saying and how interesting those things are. Like he genuinely finds people's conversations so interesting and wants to know more. And so we've hung out with Joe and his wife, and the conversations that Joe and I have and the conversations that Joe has with his colleagues and coworkers and I have with other chefs and friends that are chefs when we hang out, Stephen is like, these are the conversations I'm not hearing. Whether they're serious about news topics or you're talking shit or it's funny, these are the conversations that I would love to hear on a food podcast. So that's how that one started. And then the food history started because those are the conversations that Stephen and I are having at home. Because he's a nerd. I married the king of the nerds and I love it. I fucking love it.
I need to tell every woman who is interested in straight men, you need to marry the nice nerdy guys.
Yes. Oh my God.
They are the always
Win.
Agreed. Because sorry to call my sweetheart a nerd as well. But
Yeah, sorry, babe.
again, like when they're so passionate about something,
Yes.
like that's who is going to be with you for decades as you get old. Yeah.
And they like to see things grow and change and morph, and they're here for the conversations surrounding everything, and they want to know more. And I love that. I actually, when I was like in my 20s, I had a t-shirt that said, I heart nerds, because all my best friends growing up were nerds. Like we were nerds. We were like #1 at the Scholastic Book Fair. And, you know, these are all people who are passionate and deep dive into what they're passionate about. And when I met Stephen, it was similar because he was a history major in undergrad before going to law school. He was already into food when we met. But the more he learned about food, I would tell him, he's like, whoa, why is this jalapeno super spicy? The other one wasn't that spicy. I'm like, well, that means the level of capsaicin is higher. And this one is grassier because it's younger and the capsaicin hasn't developed. And then you taste more of the chlorophyll and that grassy flavor. And so he's like, how do you know this shit? And he was like, you call me a nerd?
Science, too.
It's thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. It's all science. And
so you guys are gonna
most of my books are like ratios and the science behind food.
Oh my God. Amazing.
I love it. Love it. And so that's how it started, because we were talking about the history of food so much. And when I was doing the residency at Blue Hill Stone Barns a few years ago, I was doing so much research into the foodways of the US. And we got to talking about pizza and we got to talking about these other things. I mean, it's really cool how he was like, well, why don't we start a podcast that talks about the history of these? Because now that Google is a thing and the internet is a thing, you don't have to go to the library and look up all these sources. You still do a lot of that hard research, but you have a place to start. And so we were like, let's deep dive. And we'd be sitting on the couch like, oh my God, did you know that in 652 BC this happened? And, you know, it's like we're finding these things out and we're like, okay, now we need to go verify that. And so that was how that came about, because we're literally sitting on the couch nerding out about ordering pizza one night and wanting to know
where
more
it came
behind
from.
it. Yeah.
This is going to be such an amazing series. I can't wait. This sounds very, as you're describing it, it sounds like the food version of Acquired. So that is very all around like giant companies and what their exits have looked like and everything. But they deep dive into history. Like they've gone hours on Hermes. These and you're like, whoa.
Okay, we're not going that deep.
Yeah. And you're like, whoa. So I can't wait. I really can't wait.
His favorite podcasts are The Rest is History and This is History.
Okay.
They're actually two different, although the names are similar. And one of them, I can't remember which one, had 17 episodes on like King Henry the something. And he's in it. He goes for his morning walks and he is listening to it and he is excited about what he's learning. I mean, yeah.
History, it's good for us to know history. Because we all see it happening again.
Yep, 100%. Here we are.
Lord, I cannot. This is going to be so exciting. Folks, this is one of the first few podcasts, hopefully, that will talk about this. Last few questions, because I know you've got a crazy busy day ahead of you. I have to ask, because again, this is the perfect bite. We're talking about our founders and entrepreneurialism across food and bev. What has it been like to then officially say like, wow, I'm a founder of a production company with my husband, and that is your focus right now?
Until you said it out loud, Sarah, I can't say I honestly thought of it that way. I mean, wow, I'm going to need a few minutes to digest that. But Yeah, I guess that's the thing now. And it's, again, I thought I would be in a kitchen until I was in my upper 50s and then find a fallback career. So every day is so awesome because it's stuff that I never saw myself doing. And this is another iteration of something that I never thought I would see or do. And I mean, podcasting wasn't a thing when I started cooking. Owning a production company, starting a production company, working with your husband, like wasn't something I ever in a million years would have thought that I'm doing. And I love it. I absolutely love it because every day is different. Every day is a challenge and it makes you think and grow in ways that you may not have a skill set for something starting off, but necessity is the mother of invention. And you figure things out as you go along. And as long as you keep the best interests of everybody first and foremost, and you're not trying to get over on anything or anybody, you just want to stick to the quality and the vision, then I think you'll be successful, or at least you'll be happy and feel good about the way that you've done it.
Absolutely. Again, just stay true to yourself and stay true to how you treat others for
Yeah.
sure, because that's so important. How do you see this growing? Like you mentioned, you're now about to do show number 2 within this first year. Are you guys thinking television or any sort of series along those lines too?
There
Or
are
perhaps more books?
Oh, perhaps. We'll see. It's honestly like right now we're trying to get this going and get this launched and edited and set. And there are things that we would like to do. There's a couple of show ideas we've developed that we would like to get to pitch stage and work on. So we'll see how that goes. But again, things come up that I'm like, I would have never thought this is an option. But there are so many amazing stories out there. Anybody you see on the street has an amazing story. And that is what I find so awesome about this because it really gives me the lens to pull back. I'm passing somebody on the street and I'm like, man, I wonder what their story is.
Yes.
And I wonder how they see food. I wonder how they see the world they exist in and the space they occupy. And it's just really cool to think that way and see people as all so special and individual and hopefully have a platform to help people share their stories.
And I'm just so excited to see the ones that you'll keep sharing here. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you
It's
so much,
great.
Sarah.
Oh,
Thank you.
last question before the world's best and hardest question. So, what is one piece of advice you'd like to give anyone who's looking to be an entrepreneur, whether it's within food, bev, hospitality, or anything else?
The first thing that I would say for anybody thinking about starting an idea is do it. That's honestly, do it.
Let's do it.
You've got to start somewhere. Perfect is the enemy of progress. Everybody's waiting. And I did that too. I do that all the time. I'm like, oh, this doesn't look right, so I can't post this picture, or this recipe isn't right, so I can't serve this. Or, it's sometimes perfection gets in the way of progress because we're not seeing the steps along the way that we've made because we just see that it's not perfect. And
Yes.
whatever perfect in our eyes is. And perfect to you might not be what you think it should be, but it's above and beyond. And when you put it out there, other people are so excited by what you've done. So I would say don't let perfection get in the way of progress and
That's a good one.
just get it started, because once you get started, that momentum will carry you through to getting to whatever your vision or ideal of perfect or happy in this thing is.
Absolutely. And again, you'll never know until you try.
Yeah,
And then you can tweak it then. It's okay.
exactly. Exactly.
Oh, Adrienne, this is time. It always makes me excited and also sad because that means we're coming to the end here. So a little reminder to everyone, this is called The Perfect Bite because it's a perfect bite of our friends across the food and bev value chain, but also because we each have our own perfect bites. So a meal, a recipe, something you've eaten in your life that every time you think about it, it makes you smile. So Adrienne, what is your perfect bite?
Oh, honestly, to me, a perfect bite is a beautifully well-made, like marinara pizza. I love it. The blistered crust. The bottom is like crisp on the bottom, but it has a little bit of chew to it. Not so chewy and tough, but then the top just covered with a bright, acidic, slightly sweet tomato sauce, a little bit of anchovy, black olives, maybe a little hit of chopped parsley or some torn basil. That to me is a perfect bite.
So it's so interesting too, because you add like a little kick to it too with like an anchovy, something different.
It's one of the pizzas that existed before cheese, or not all pizza had cheese. So it was one of the original pizzas that was made by the wives of the dock workers and the fishermen. So they would make these flatbreads and top it with just the crushed tomato from the San Marzano from Mount Vesuvius. And they would sprinkle a little bit of cured anchovies, a little bit of chopped olives, sometimes a little slice or two of lard, but just a drizzle of olive oil is enough fat to round everything out. And it is so simple, but it is so delicious.
I feel like that is your cooking there too. Bringing in that sense of history and love, but also like, yeah, we're going to kick it up a notch a little bit too. Make it special for the everyday.
Yeah.
Adrienne, this has been so wonderful. Thank you again for taking so much time. Your story, the stories you're telling are so great. I can't wait to see what you do next. Can you let folks know where to find you? So let's talk podcasts, social platforms, websites, and anywhere else.
Yes. So people can find the Chef's Cut podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much all those platforms. We are launching Eating History again on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. That'll be coming out May 20th. And on Instagram, Chef Adrienne Cheatham. I have a couple shows coming out on Food Network right now. So
Barbecue Brawl.
Yes. Baby's first like long-term show. So very exciting. Yeah, there's always something going on. So social media is probably the place to find it. And it links to everything else going on there.
Thank you again, Adrienne.
Thank you, Sarah.
Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. This was Adrienne Cheatham's Perfect Bite.
Thanks for tuning in to The Perfect Bite today. You can listen to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thanks in advance for subscribing, rating, and reviewing. You can follow The Perfect Bite on social media @PerfectBitePod. Now go get something good to eat.